The first time Sophia met David, she felt like the luckiest woman alive. He was kind, funny, and knew exactly how to make her feel special. When he proposed, she cried tears of joy, believing she had found her soulmate. Their wedding was magical, the start of a perfect life together. And for a while, everything was perfect. They built a home filled with love, laughter, and soon enough, 2 beautiful children. David was an amazing father, doting and affectionate. Sophia often watched him play with their kids and thought to herself, "This is the man I prayed for." But 4 months into their marriage, something changed. At first, it was subtle, David whispering in her ear late at night, asking for something different. "Let's try something new, babe. Just once." Sophia had always believed that intimacy was about trust and exploration, so she agreed. But once turned into twice, then 3 times. And before she realized it, it became the only thing he wanted. She tried to ignore the sinking feeling in her chest. Maybe it's just a phase, she told herself. Maybe he'll grow out of it. But he never did. In 3 years of marriage, David had only had vaginal sex with her 16 times. The rest was always anal, and then he took it further. One night, after they had finished, she turned to him, ready to cuddle. But David wasn't done. He grabbed her hips and kissed her there. Sophia jerked away in horror. "David, what the hell are you doing?" He smiled, his grip tightening. "Relax, baby. It's just us." Her stomach churned with revulsion. Something about it felt wrong. Then came the night he asked her to do it to him. Sophia stared at him across the dinner table, fork frozen mid-air. "You're joking," she said, hoping, praying this was just a sick joke. But David's eyes held no humor. "Come on, babe," he coaxed. "You love me, don't you?" Sophia put her fork down, sick to her stomach. "David, I'm not doing that." His face darkened, his fingers drumming against the table. That was the moment she knew. This wasn't about love. It never had been. From that night, David's requests became demands. If she refused, he sulked, grew cold, distant. He stopped kissing her, stopped holding her hand, stopped looking at her with love in his eyes. "You never used to complain," he would say. "I thought you liked it." Sophia felt trapped in a marriage where her wants, needs, and voice didn't matter. Then came the night that destroyed her. David had been drinking. He came home late, his breath thick with whiskey. Sophia was already in bed, exhausted. She barely had time to react before he was on top of her. "Not tonight," she murmured, turning away. He ignored her. "David, please, I'm tired." But he wasn't listening. He never listened. He pushed harder than usual. Pain ripped through her. Sophia screamed. "Stop!" she cried, clawing at his arms. "David, you're hurting me." But he didn't stop. Snap. A sharp, horrific cracking sound echoed in her body, like wood breaking. Sophia's scream turned into a silent, breathless sob. The pain was unimaginable. A white-hot agony tore through her, ripping her apart from the inside out. By the time he was done, she was shaking, curled up in a fetal position, blood soaking the sheets beneath her. David got up, wiped himself off, and went to sleep, as if nothing had happened. Sophia lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling, body wrecked, heart shattered. The next morning she couldn't sit. She couldn't stand. She couldn't even walk without searing pain tearing through her. Then she went to the bathroom and saw blood, not just a little, terrifying amount. She gasped, gripping the sink, her entire body trembling. When she tried to relieve herself, she nearly blacked out from the pain. It felt like her insides were being shredded. But the worst part, the bleeding never stopped. Days turned into weeks, and Sophia lost control of her bowels. She started wearing diapers. Flies followed her. She went to the doctor, desperate for answers. But nothing could have prepared her for the diagnosis: rectal collapse and anal sepsis. Her body had been pushed beyond its limits. The trauma had weakened her muscles, causing her rectum to slip out of place. Worse, an infection had spread through her, rotting her from the inside. Sophia couldn't stop crying. Her life was falling apart. She went to the bank one day, standing in line, praying no one could smell it. Then she heard it. "What's that smell? God, it stinks. Jesus Christ, who are themselves?" Asterisk. She wanted to disappear. Then the ultimate betrayal. One evening, David walked into their room, a suitcase in hand. "I'm leaving," he said. Sophia froze. "What?" "I can't do this anymore," he said coldly. "You let this happen to yourself." Sophia stared at him, heart hammering in her chest. "You did this to me," David scoffed. "You should have protected yourself better." Her entire body went cold. "You enjoyed it," he accused. "You never said anything before. And now I have to deal with this." Sophia wanted to scream, to punch him, to make him feel even an ounce of the pain he had inflicted. But she was too weak, too broken. David walked out the door, leaving her with nothing but pain, diapers, and a body that would never be the same. That night, Sophia lay in bed, silent tears slipping down her face. She had given him her heart, her body, her trust, and he had destroyed her, used her. And now, she was left to pick up the shattered pieces of her ruined life, alone. The days after David left were a blur of pain, shame, and endless doctor's appointments. Sophia sat in the sterile hospital room, hands gripping the armrests of her chair as the doctor read through her latest test results. "The infection is severe," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Your body is struggling to fight it off. If we don't act quickly, it could lead to full-blown septic shock." Sophia swallowed hard. Septic shock. She knew what that meant. She had seen the articles online. People died from this. Her fingers trembled as she wiped a tear from her cheek. What do I need to do?" The doctor sighed. "Surgery." Sophia felt the room spin. "Surgery," she repeated, her voice hollow. "We need to repair the damage as much as possible," the doctor continued. "And there's a chance you may need a colostomy bag, at least temporarily." Sophia clutched her stomach, nausea rising. Colostomy bag. She had read about those. A plastic pouch attached to her abdomen to collect waste because her body could no longer function the way it should. She wanted to scream, wanted to rewind time. How had she ended up here? David hadn't contacted her once since he left. Not even to check on the kids. Her mother had moved in temporarily to help with them, taking on the role of both caregiver and emotional support. "You're stronger than this, Sophia," her mother would whisper at night, stroking her hair as if she were still a child. "You will rise from this." But Sophia didn't feel strong. She felt like a rotting corpse in her own skin. And then David came back. It was a rainy afternoon when she heard the knock at the door. Sophia, wearing a loose hoodie and sweatpants, shuffled to the entrance, her stomach twisting with unease. When she pulled the door open and saw him standing there, she almost slammed it in his face. David looked different, less arrogant, but his eyes still held that same selfish glint. "Sophia," he said, as if the sound of her name on his lips wasn't poison. "What do you want?" she snapped, gripping the doorframe for support. David sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I just wanted to." "You left," she cut him off, her voice shaking. "You abandoned me in the worst moment of my life. And now you want to what? Apologize. Act like you care." David's jaw clenched. "I didn't abandon you." Sophia laughed bitterly. "You said I should have protected myself better. You blamed me for what you did to me." David's face darkened. "I never forced you." Sophia felt rage boil in her chest. "You broke me." She took a shaky breath, eyes blazing. "You raped me, David." David's face paled. "That's not." "You didn't stop," she screamed. "I begged you, and you kept going. I am living in a broken body because of you." Her hands were shaking, her vision blurred with tears. David looked away, guilt flickering across his face. But it was too late. Too damn late. "I want a divorce," Sophia whispered. David's eyes snapped back to hers. "What?" Sophia felt something shift inside her. A small, burning ember of strength. She had been shattered, humiliated, abandoned. but she was still standing. "I want a divorce," she repeated, voice steady this time. "And you are never coming near me or the kids again." David took a step forward, but she slammed the door in his face. And for the first time in a long time, Sophia felt free. The divorce proceedings were brutal. David fought her every step of the way. He refused to sign the papers, dodged court dates, and even had the audacity to demand custody of their children, the same children he had abandoned. "He won't win," Sophia's lawyer assured her. "We have medical records, testimonies, and evidence of his neglect." But it wasn't just about winning. It was about reclaiming her life. Each day was a struggle. She was still adjusting to the colostomy bag, still enduring the shame of her body's betrayal. But she refused to let it define her. Her mother remained her rock, reminding her daily that she was more than her pain. "You are still Sophia," she would say. "Not what he did to you, not the scars he left. You are still you." But Sophia wasn't sure who she was anymore. Until the police came knocking. "Mrs. Walker." The officer at the door looked at her with gentle yet firm eyes. "We need to talk about your husband." Sophia's heart skipped. "What about him?" The officer exhaled. "You're not the first woman to come forward with allegations against him." Sophia's stomach dropped. "There are other victims," the officer continued. "We have reason to believe your husband has been engaging in repeated acts of sexual abuse. Would you be willing to testify?" Sophia's fingers tightened around the doorknob. She had spent months drowning in shame. Spent years letting David strip away her sense of self. And now she had a chance to fight back. "I'll do it," she said, her voice unwavering. And for the first time in a long time, Sophia felt powerful. The trial was national news. David, once seen as the perfect husband, now sat in a courtroom, exposed for the monster he was. Sophia took the stand, her hands trembling slightly as she faced him. But she refused to look away. "I begged him to stop," she told the court, her voice raw with emotion. "I cried. I screamed. And he didn't care." David's lawyer tried to twist her words, painting her as a willing participant. "You never reported this before, did you?" Sophia's jaw tightened. "I was ashamed. I thought if I stayed quiet it would stop. But it never did." She watched David squirm, watched the confidence drain from his face as more victims came forward. By the time the verdict was read, David Walker was found guilty of multiple counts of sexual assault. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Sophia sat in the courtroom, tears streaming down her face. Not out of sadness, but relief. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a warrior. Took time. Healing wasn't instant. There were still nightmares, still moments of doubt. But Sophia learned to love herself again. She started therapy. She joined a survivor's support group. And one day, she looked in the mirror and didn't see a victim anymore. She saw a woman who had been broken, but never destroyed. And for the first time in years, Sophia smiled. Because she had won. She had survived. And most importantly, she was free.